Hey guys, Alex Hamilton, YouRise Education. It's spring, which means college decisions are out and the end of the school year is near. With that in mind, I kind of wanted to share a little bit about my college application journey, especially since I applied to 22 schools. Yeah, so that's 2 more than the Common App limit of 20. Fortunately, I didn't have to create another Common App account, which, by the way, you should definitely not do. The 22 schools to which I applied were Amherst College, Bowdoin College, Brown University, Carleton College, Columbia University, the University of Colorado, Duke University, Emory University, Johns Hopkins University, the University of Michigan, Northwestern University, the University of North Carolina, the University of Pennsylvania, Rice University, Stanford University, Tufts University, UChicago, Vanderbilt University, the University of Virginia, Williams College, Yale University, and Yale NUS. The 2 outside of the 20 on the Common App to which I applied included the University of Colorado, my local state school at the time, which back then did not use the Common App, and Yale NUS in Singapore, to which I applied when applying to Yale. Yale NUS is currently being restructured and will not graduate candidates after this year. So 22 schools is a lot, and more is not necessarily better. In addition to potentially running up costs for applications, applying to more schools can be tricky because chances are senior year is keeping you really busy. With classes, exams, extracurriculars, and social life, adding 24 schools to apply to is not going to make things any easier. Sure, you'll find that you could recycle a lot of essays on those involving why major or community themes, but writing why school essays requires a lot of due diligence. The same applies to interviews for colleges that offer them. In other words, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. So why did I apply to so many? Well, financial aid was a big consideration. I was applying through QuestBridge, a program that supports students who are first-generation college students and/or those from low-income backgrounds. If you're interested in QuestBridge, you could find out more information on their site. Note that while you don't have to be an American citizen to apply, you do have to attend an American high school among meeting other qualifications. Anyways, so with my application, with the exception of the University of Colorado, all my schools were QuestBridge partners and/or need blind. As a reminder, a need blind school is any institution that evaluates your candidacy without considering your ability to pay. That is, you will not get rejected because the university gets the sense that you will not be able to afford attendance. Now, a trade-off of choosing to apply through QuestBridge is that I could not apply to any schools through early decision. And as I wasn't matched any QuestBridge schools in November, that left me 22 schools that I was waiting on for regular decision. If you're wondering what all these decision schedules mean, then be sure to check out the video I made on that topic. Anyways, as a result of this decision, I made it to March of my senior year without a single acceptance. Yeah, I was kind of nervous. For context, I had a weighted GPA above 4.6, 35 on the ACT, and I was within the top 1.5% of students in a public high school of almost 4,000, with almost 1,000 in my class alone. I'd also been involved in various extracurricular activities, including community service and volunteering, and I've received several rewards as well. If you're curious about my profile, I made a more detailed video on that, so be sure to check it out. But ultimately, considering that I was interested in pre-medicine and having studied Chinese, I applied to some programs in biology and others in East Asian studies. A note on major selection. In many colleges or universities in the United States, it's normally pretty easy to change your prospective major before officially declaring, which typically happens during your sophomore year. An exception is if you've applied to a specialized pre-professional program or within a sub-school at the university. For instance, if you received admittance to NYU's College of Arts and Sciences, there's no guarantee that you'd be able to change your major to business at NYU Stern. Major selection on the Common App can make a difference because you'll be compared against applicants with similar profiles and interests. So keep that in mind when considering your own competitive advantage as an applicant. That's why I had more than one potential major depending on where I was applying. But even with that strategy, there were still no acceptances before March. I finally got a much needed morale boost when the University of Colorado accepted me early that month. Based on my GPA and as an in-state student, I knew that the university had to accept me, but honestly, it was a little worrying to have been kept waiting so long. Now I at least had something, but the thing was, Colorado was not a need blind school, meaning that there wasn't a lot of financial aid, and that I would have to take out loans if I wanted to attend. I applied to other schools that tended to be more generous with financial aid, such as the University of North Carolina, the University of Michigan, and the University of Virginia. These schools got back to me around the same time, and they were all waitlists. I think this is because these schools retain spots for in-state applicants, and I didn't apply early action. Knowing what I know now, I definitely think it would have been a better move to have applied early action, because that could have really signaled to the schools that I was interested in attending. Over the following week or so, I also got some news from the private schools to which I applied, including Duke, Northwestern, Tufts, UChicago, and Vanderbilt. Duke was a rejection, and I wasn't really surprised. The interview had gone really well. I remember we talked a lot about the biomedical programs and basketball and all the different opportunities on campus that interested me. But then again, Duke is a really competitive school. Same thing with Tufts. Great interview and whatnot, but also a rejection. Northwestern was a rejection as well, but I hadn't interviewed with them, and considering that I didn't have as many opportunities to express my interest, it wasn't much of a shock. But UChicago was interesting. They had sent me a shirt after I applied, which I actually kept this entire time. So I'm like, oh great, like they sent me a shirt, they must be interested in me. But yeah, not so much. They ended up rejecting me outright. Why exactly, I don't know. But I'm glad that I kept the shirt because I ended up doing my MBA there years later. Next, Vanderbilt was a waitlist. And this was actually a good sanity check for me, because up to that point I was a little worried, like, did I overestimate my profile, or was I not where I needed to be for these top schools? But with the waitlist, I was able to tell myself at least like, oh, well, the adcoms didn't reject me outright. I must have given them some kind of pause in their decision, so I can't be that bad, right? Moving into late March, I began to hear back from the liberal arts schools to which I applied, and this is where things began to take a bit of a turn. Williams waitlisted me, but the other three, Amherst, Bowdoin, and Carleton, all accepted me. I was obviously thrilled at this point. Of the three, Carleton was the only one that I had seen up to that point because they graciously offered to fly me out during my junior summer. In fact, Carleton was the only one of those 22 that I'd actually been to by that point of applying. Which, by the way, if there are schools that interest you and you don't have the chance to visit them in person before applying, then definitely be sure to check out some of my videos because I'll have you covered. But anyways, for these liberal arts colleges, for what I wasn't able to express by in-person visits, I felt I was really able to express in their essays. Most liberal arts schools, these included, place a lot of emphasis on the written component with fun, unique prompts. As I did my research into these programs, I really felt like I was able to express my interest in attending, even without having conducted any interviews, with the exception of Carleton during that on-campus visit. I think comparatively, that's why I did better with the liberal arts colleges than most of the private universities. I guess the moral of the story here is that if possible, it may be worth applying to a variety of program types, both universities and colleges, because you may find that your profile lands much more with the adcoms at one type of program than at the other. From there, we were heading into Ivy Day, and this brought a roller coaster of results. Early that week, I heard back from Emory, and this was also a yes. However, Columbia and Yale, the first Ivies I heard back from, were unsurprisingly no's. The interviews I thought went okay, but same kind of thing with Duke, very selective programs. Yale NUS, however, was a wait list. And I was pleasantly surprised by this because it's like I had something with Yale's name on it that wasn't an outright rejection. Penn was also a waitlist. And in a similar vein, I'm like, okay, this is decent news. It could be worse. But Ivy Day brought some big acceptances. Johns Hopkins, and then that evening, Brown. At this point, I could hardly believe it. Brown was a dream school, and knowing how competitive it was, I was honestly surprised to open up the letter and see the first sentence be, congratulations, and not, thank you for applying. Towards the end, I heard back from Rice, which was a wait list, and Stanford, which was another rejection. At this point though, I was too excited to really care. I was thrilled with Brown, and even though I wasn't able to visit immediately after acceptance, I felt that it was the right place for me, especially with the really generous financial aid package they offered. Brown's really done a tremendous job in recent years of creating opportunities for people to attend regardless of financial background. Through the Brown Promise, the school has effectively eliminated the use of student loans in financial aid packages, and it's one of only a handful of schools in the entire country that offers need-blind consideration for international applicants. I was really fortunate to attend Brown, where I ended up studying neuroscience and Chinese. So in the end, my application results were practically an even split. 7 acceptances, 7 waitlists, and 8 rejections. Technically, my results on the rejection side were heavier, but still, it worked out. After all, you only need one offer that works for you. But that's my story. What about yours? For those of you who also applied to many schools, I'm curious how the process worked out for you. And for those of you applying to college soon, which schools are on your radar? I'd love to know. And if you found this kind of long-form content interesting or helpful, then be sure to let me know with a like and consider subscribing to stay up to date. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.